Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Los Angeles. I'm Marcel Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas, and we are underway. We have Brian Kibler looking to make the top 8 here. He's sitting at 12-2 playing Teamer Tempo versus Eric Pay on mono red aggro here. I think he's the only one of the top tables with a deck like this. Everybody else seems to be kind of aligned with a clan of some sort. What does this matchup look like for you? I mean, both players are trying to get their opponent dead as quickly as possible.
Yes, Eric much more than Brian here.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the death of the 2-1 is overstated. Maybe there just a lot came in and this is the only one that has escaped. But, Foundry Seat Denizen is trying to set up a game where Brian isn't able to stop himself from taking a bunch of early damage. And Eric has got a slightly more swarm-heavy build. He's got a lot of just like all one-drops. He's just trying to jump as many creatures on the board as possible. He has very few burn spells, just 4 Stoke the Flames and 2 Lightning Strikes. So it's more looking to just, attack with a bunch of small creatures than he is to burn Kibler out.
Now, how does that work with Kibler's creatures? Like, taking a look, he's got an Elvish Mystic here. Like, would he just eagerly trade that thing off for the Foundry Street Denizen, for example, just to preserve his life total?
Depends on Kibler's hand. I mean, we can see that he's got a Pelucranos here through his rapid shuffling, but so he really does want to cast that. But Eric might just skip the middleman and just go ahead and Lightning Strike the Elvish Mystic.
Okay, he does that. The Elvish Mystic down. He's going to get in there for a damage on Kibler. Kibler's now at 18 thanks to the Wooded Foothills as well.
And Kibler's got a good draw for this. He's got Elvish Mystic into Heir of the Wilds if he's got a second untapped land, or though that land looks like it might be Mana Confluence, which is not the second land you want here.
No. He's also got a Crater's Claws, I believe, which he could kill the Foundry Street Denizen. Like, is this the type of matchup where you would just kill any creature no matter what, or are Eric Pay's creatures pretty redundant?
You would just, I mean, he has got a lot of redundant creatures, but you would generally just,
snap off any, even like a lowly Foundry Street Denizen.
Oh, definitely. Kibler's got a Lightning Strike in hand, and the reason he wants to use Lightning Strike over Crater's Claws is sometimes you can cast Claws for 1 mana.
Okay.
So he'd rather use the 2 mana guaranteed spell now, which he's almost assuredly going to cast, and then follow it up with a Crater's Claws. So Arena Athlete from Eric Pay.
I did not think I was going to see Arena Athlete here.
Followed by Frenzied Goblin, and Eric had Hammer Hands in hand.
Okay, so he's playing around Lightning Strike.
But the Lightning Strike was a little telegraphed here, especially with the Mana Confluence instead of a tap land.
Right. All right, and Kibler feels forced to fire that off. He does take 1 damage, but he will not have to deal with 3 damage he would have taken from the Foundry Street Denizen here. But now all of a sudden that Frenzied Goblin is pretty scary, and of course the Arena Athlete threatens to do the most damage, and there it is, Crater's Claws. Kibler trying to keep the board as clear as humanly possible here, even though he is taking incidental damage off of his Mana Confluence. He's left his opponent with a 1/1.
Yeah, and Eric is really looking for just cheap creatures at this point, since his hand is, was before his draw step was Stoke and Hammer Hands.
This is very ambitious camera shot.
Yeah.
trying to get the close in on Kibler's hand. I like it.
The good thing for Eric is Frenzied Goblin, in some ways blanks Kibler's next creature drop, because it means he's going to get another turn of uninterrupted attacks. What he really needs is another creature to play this turn, and we'll see if he's gotten there on his draw step. He's got a lot of creatures. I mean, his deck, is basically all creatures. 18 mountains, a bunch of, burn and pump spells, and the rest is creatures.
Yeah, piling Hammer Hands onto the Frenzied Goblins, not the name of the game here. Randy, what else is going to the top tables?
Brad Nelson is going on at the top tables. Hordling Outburst.
Just started.
Hordling Outburst into Butcher of the Horde. Smash, smash. Austin Bach has already scooped him up in game 1.
Wow, that was fast. We're watching Mono Red versus Tempo Teamer, and we're in the middle stages of game 1. So.
Austin Bach had a Lightning Strike for the Seeker. It could have been worse.
Thanks, Randy.
So Eric played Monastery Swiftspear, and here's what he was thinking about. It already has haste, so Hammer Hands doesn't need to give it haste, but Hammer Hands represents 2 damage here.
It does make it bigger, yeah.
Though he misses the can't block trigger. I like playing the Hammer Hands there, because you already have the Frenzied Goblin, to use that effect next turn. So I think it's going to end up being better.
Kibler foreshadowing a block here.
Putting up, like, yeah, my guy's going to be able to block.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, that Frenzied Goblin should keep Heir of the Wilds safely away from any blocks here, and it does indeed. So there's another 3 damage, bringing Kibler down to 9, and a Foundry Street Denizen. This is where Kibler's supposed to take over the game, right? This is where Kibler plays 5/5s and Eric Pay plays 1/1s.
Yeah, I mean, Kibler is likely going to play Pelucranos if he doesn't have a, depending on what his other options are, but he has to take damage. Actually, given that he has two 2-drops, it's better just to put as many creatures on the board as possible. Again, Mana Confluence punishing Kibler a little bit here. He's essentially at 4 because there's, Stoke the Flames in Eric's hand still.
Of course, puts him in range of having a second Stoke the Flames to kill him, but Kibler's beyond being able to play around that at this point. He's going to lose to the creatures before that happens, so. Assuming
Eric did not draw something relevant, if he drew something like Hammer Hands, this would be very different. But let's say he didn't draw anything. He can attack with all 3. He can Frenzied Goblin and Air. That gives Kibler blocking the Swift Spear with his other 2/2 Death Touch and maybe the Rattleclaw and the Frenzied Goblin and dealing 1 to Kibler, putting him to 7. That's not, and trading 2 creatures for a Rattleclaw Mystic and actually that's not that bad.
That's not that bad, right?
And it all changes a lot if Eric actually drew
Hammer Hands.
Actual Hammer Hands.
Wow.
That was what I think he wanted to draw. I think that felt like it was the best draw here because now he can make it so both of Kibler's heirs can't block.
Right, and of course the Monastery Swift Spear is going to trigger from the Hammer Hand as well. And Kibler is going to take, what is it, 1, 2,
he takes
3,
5 going
4,
to 3.
5?
And with Eric having a Stoke in hand. So Kibler is, that Hammer Hands I think sealed his fate.
Okay. Kibler doesn't have any way to gain life in this deck, right?
He doesn't, and unless he has, he doesn't have, unless he has a Stubborn Denial access, right now and the mana, the ability to keep mana out for it, it's going to be unlikely.
That is interesting with Convoke. But I don't think the Kibler has either of the counters in game 1.
Right.
And he's actually going to drop down to 3 to go into Lightning Strike range here as well because he wants to cast Polukranos and not die to the board.
Yeah, and I think the Polukranos makes sense. But
yeah, and that's going to do it. Stoke the Flames is shown by Eric Pay, and he's going to scoop up game 1 against Brian Kibler. So Brian's now got to win back-to-back games. Does this matchup improve for him post-board, though? You'd think that most decks would have some type of plan for, generally aggressive decks, even if they're not maybe quite as aggressive as Eric's deck is.
I don't think it's going to change an incredible amount just because Kibler, I don't think he has too much, you can't have too many of the super focused cards that you really would want in this matchup. That being said, if we can go ahead and grab Kibler's deck list, we'll be able to take a closer look at that. But Eric is also not going to be able to change a whole lot. I mean, Eric, he can play Peak Eruption, but Kibler has a lot of actual non-mountains in his deck.
Right.
So that's more for a Chain to the Rocks decks.
Right.
And he can play more Lightning Strikes if he wants, but I, again, don't think that's really what he's looking for. Searing Blood might be it, though, because Kibler has Rattleclaw Mystic, Elvish Mystic, and Heir of the Wilds. So that might be the sort of card he's looking for. Well, I mean, one of the virtues of this, this mono-red deck not being the most popular right now is that people are not playing as many sideboard cards, Arc Lightnings or Anger of the Gods, that you really don't want to see, maybe Magma Spray, that sort of thing. So even though Kibler is going to be able to put in a few cheaper removal spells, take out cards like Temur Charm out of his deck, I still think that this matchup, Eric is built to beat the green decks. I think that is the idea.
Okay.
Whether he's succeeded, well, it looks like he's doing well so far.
Right, we were talking about it earlier in the weekend about Courser of Krufix and how we've seen aggressive decks either disappear or completely change the way that they're built to try to get around that card. Of course, looks like Hammer Hand and Frenzy Goblin are the name of the game there. You can just ignore
Yeah,
blockers.
Their whole, the whole reason behind them is just to blank blockers, and that's what Eric did that game. He did a lot of forcing Kibler to not block.
Yeah, Kibler had a reasonable draw. He made, 4 or 5 creatures total.
Yeah,
Mana Confluence was pretty raw that game too.
Yeah, the Mana Confluence was tough because that did 3 or 4 damage to Kibler, but I think that the main thing was, Kibler's draw was Elvish Mystic into Heir of the Wilds, or Elvish Mystic into Lightning Strike into Heir of the Wilds into Air plus Rattleclaw. He had an interactive spell every turn +2 on the last turn.
Right.
And Eric still just ran
And even
over.
Polukranos at the end of it all.
Yeah, so that was a good draw and still not quite enough.
All right, so Randy gave us the update a few minutes ago. Brad Nelson just ran over Austin Bach in that first round. We were watching what was ultimately a pretty quick game on our main feature, and this one was done halfway through. So Butcher of the Horde did work for Brad Nelson in the first game. It looks like it's a 3-drop versus a 3-drop here, and kind of like Austin's side of the equation currently. Manus Rider beating in for 3 while Brad's just got the 3 tokens, and it looks like Crackling Doom, I believe he just played. Yeah, yep. There it is.
And I would imagine that a big part of incentive to play Brad's deck is he probably thinks he's got a pretty good matchup against Jessica. I don't see why you would play a deck that if you think you're a huge underdog to it. So, and the way the cards line up seem to be pretty good. Hordling Outburst lines up very well against Lightning Strike and Magma Jet.
That was a nice turn for Brad. 5 damage in there. But a replacement Mantis Rider for Austin. Can Brad repeat the process here and just keep hitting for 5 with Crackling Doom and a bunch of tokens? Does he just have some other removal spell for the Mantis?
It might be a Butcher here because he's getting a 4. I mean, and Sorin would be okay. Plussing Sorin, I guess, deals 4 and gains you 6, and then you've got a Sorin on 5 that's not going to die directly to Mantis Rider, but I don't know if that's really what Brad's looking to do.
All right, let's see what he comes up with here. If he does play Butcher, do you expect him to give it haste and fight?
Yeah. I do, yeah.
Okay, and that's exactly what happened. He's even sending in both of the tokens here, so basically disincentivizing Austin from being able to chump.
Yeah, and every token that, the token that got blocked got, turned into a lifelink activation off the Butcher, so pretty big life swing, deal 6, gain 5.
Not too bad.
And Austin's going to need like a suspension field or some other cheap way to get rid of the Butcher if he wants to, keep this thing rolling. Otherwise, he is going to lose out. And it looks like he actually has exactly that.
He's got suspension field, okay. So Butcher down, but the damage is done.
And the life
Brad
is
Nelson
gained.
still, yeah, and Brad Nelson has, I think, 4 cards left in his hand still as well. Though the Mantis Rider's still alive and still taking chunks out of Brad Nelson's life total here. So Brad will have to deal with that at some point or come up with a sweet threat. And he's interestingly going to start by attacking with the Goblin. Is that a Wingmate Rock situation that you see here, or what are we looking at?
That's the card that would explain it.
So that would be a block then from Austin, like there's no reason not to.
Yeah, there's no downside to blocking. This is where Disdainful Stroke is gonna be very good. Oh, it looks like actually Anger of the Gods is the card. So a little less effective than Wingmate Rock. I mean, I think Brad would much rather just have the rock, but Anger still is effective.
All right, and it looks like Magma Jet to follow up as well. So we now have a completely cleared out board. Brad Nelson has got 3 cards in his hand. Austin is right now scrying 2. We'll jump back over to our main match once the players are done sideboarding, but this is a live look in.
Players have been done and been playing for minutes. We're missing soap now. They're not playing.
Calm down, Luis. Rashad wouldn't let that happen.
You mean Rusty wouldn't let that happen?
Rusty also wouldn't let that, well, probably wouldn't let that happen.
So Austin may not have found the 5th land off Magma Jet, but if he doesn't have any 5-drops, he actually could be putting lands in the bottom despite missing land drops.
Interesting. So there's a Hordling Outburst now for Brad Nelson to start getting the damage rolling again, and he's facing down an empty board here.
So Austin just didn't do anything last turn. He didn't play a land
he
or a
didn't do
spell.
anything.
That's not a good spot to be in. I mean,
Wow.
this standard is a pretty fast format. Like, it doesn't start on turn 1 as much, but it's still like the 3, 4, and 5 mana spells you play are pretty impactful. And playing nothing with 4 mana is a pretty big waste of a turn.
All right, attack. And he's just going to take the 3, so he doesn't have anything to interact here either. Brad Nelson hitting his land drops, but I don't think he's got a whole lot going on. He's just going to pass the turn back.
With 2 cards that could be removal spells in hand.
They could be burn. There is a Jeskai Charm. Not really what Austin wants to see here. It doesn't match up well against Hordling Outburst. All right, why don't we jump back to our main feature match here. Brian Kibler down a game to Eric Pay. And we are already underway here with Monastery Swiftspear getting killed.
By a sideboarded magma spray there.
Magma spray, right. That's actually exiled as well. And there's even a follow-up elf here.
And Brian choosing to tap elf instead of Yawgmoth Coast. His life's a lot more relevant than Eric's.
Yeah, he's got to conserve every single life point he can.
This is a pretty good draw for Brian. I mean, 3 1-mana spells is kind of how you want to start against the one red deck.
Especially because he got the main threat off the battlefield. You know, that's going to make those hammer hands, and I think he's running Dragon Mantles and stuff worse. Oof.
Yeah, Searing Blood is a good sideboard option.
Blood's a good one, though.
And this is where Kibler's painful mana base does cost him a little bit. I mean,
speaking of painful,
he's taking 3 damage off his lands already.
Right, and he just, there's the Wooded Foothills.
Though it's true that Eric doesn't have, a great answer to Polukranos. Mono Red generally doesn't, so it's going to be a little tough now that Kibler's got a Polukranos against an empty board, not a Polukranos against a board full of hammer hands.
Right. So what is the plan here? Brian Kibler's at 13. So at a fairly safe life total, though we've seen Eric's deck can take pretty big chunks out of nowhere. So Brian's got to be careful, but he really has to look to shut the door quickly here, right?
He does, because Eric has, with between Searing Bloods, Stokes, and Lightning Strikes, could eventually just burn Brian out, regardless of how many blockers he has. And Brian only has one card in hand, so he's not looking to add too much more to his board. That being said, if Eric, plays like 2 1-drops, Kibler can go 5th land, eat both your 1-drops with Pelucanos, and that's the situation you don't want to be in.
Yeah, Monastery Swift Spear gets around some of that.
I don't hate the plan of just playing Hordeling Outburst. If Eric has a Hammer Hands, he could go Monastery Swift Spear, Hammer Hands, attack you for 3, and that's not that effective or ineffective either. It's getting in for 3 and putting a 2/3 on the board, which Kibler can't easily deal with. Like Pelucanos doesn't actually stop that. It also sets up future Hammer Hands to be a lot more effective.
That's a Fire Drinker Satyr, and that's actually going to pick up the Hammer Hand, and that's going to enable attack for 3, 4, 5 damage here.
Yeah, that's pretty effective, because by playing a second 1-drop, he used Hammer Hands to give haste because Swift Spear already has haste. Kibler can fight
it's going to fight it, right?
Fight the Satyr, which is if he has a 5th land, an untapped one, which is pretty good, but it's still, with Kibler at 8, he's still got to be worried about what Eric got, because Eric can easily just have a Stoke the Flames.
Right.
Kibler doesn't have a 5th land. This gets a lot more interesting. It looks like he doesn't.
He's got a Boon Satyr and a Rattleclaw Mystic. So he's going to save the Boon Satyr, I think, hoping that Eric Pay kind of moves in on maybe another Hammer Hand or something along those lines, attacks, and then Kibler can flash in the Boon Satyr to block, where Eric doesn't get to use cards like Hammer Hand and like Frenzy Goblin.
And Eric does have a Hammer Hands here. He actually drew another one, as well as another Fire Drinker Satyr. He can't put Hammer Hands on the the new Fire Drinker Satyr, because Pelucanos can shoot for 1. He could put it on the Swift Spear. Pelucanos can't currently kill that. He's probably not playing around Lightning Strike at this point. But I think he's just going to go with Hordeling Outburst past the turn.
Okay.
And if Kibler wants to use Pelucanos to kill a 1/1 token, sure. And if Kibler plays a Boon Satyr, that's also something you can't really prevent. But this sets up next turn pretty well. And
Kibler does have to do something with his mana here.
Yes, Kibler, I suspect he's more inclined to play Boon Satyr, just because you can set up a Pelucanos later for a little bit more of an effect.
And to kill the Satyr.
Yeah.
Okay, so there it is. Boon Satyr comes down, but the board's getting pretty wide here for Eric Pay. I think that was a Crater. Oh, I think it was a Magma Spray that Kibler
Which is definitely
drew.
not bad. Now that he can keep Magma Spray and Pelucanos up, he's actually in pretty good shape. He also could be looking to just Magma Spray something like the Swift Spear right now, or the 3/2 Fire Drinker. If you Magma Spray the Swift Spear and get stoked, that could be dangerous. But if he Magma Sprays the Swift Spear, he could also just telegraph Magma Spray by playing a Morph and leaving a red up.
Certainly did.
So Eric can't safely land a Hammer Hands anywhere against a Magma Spray.
This is interesting now. Yeah, the Morph, a lot better here than the Rattleclaw Mystic would be, because it can keep those tokens at bay.
Oh, that was big.
Was it a Stoke?
It was a Stoke. So now Eric can play Hammer Hands on Swift Spear maybe, and then if Kibler goes to Magma Spray, he could cast Stoke in response. Let's see, that taps out those. He can make it so Pelucanos can't block.
But is he going to go for what is he going to Magma Spray?
Well, so he would Hammer Hands the Swift Spear.
Yes.
Kibler would Magma Spray the Swift Spear in response to try to deny the Hammer Hands trigger.
And then Stoke.
Then he could cast Stoke, tapping 2 Goblins and 2 Mountains. Puts Kibler to 4, let's say. And then Kibler has 2 blockers for 4 attackers, so that puts Kibler to 2.
Wow.
I think that might be what we're seeing, though. I think he might not play around, that's if he's playing around Magma Spray, which I don't think he is. I think he's just going to Hammer Hands the Fire Drinker.
To create another attacker as well.
Yeah, it creates an extra attacker. You do get destroyed pretty hard by Magma Spray. And Kibler tapped, I don't know, Kibler tapped an Elvish Mystic to leave a mountain up. That's actually a big sacrifice right now. I think you have to put the Magma Spray. So I guess he's going to Hammer Hands. Yeah, he's just going to run it.
Wow. So Kibler gets a pretty savage 2-for-1 there. The Monastery Swift Spear will trigger, but the most key thing is that Kibler has all of his blockers live here.
Yeah. So now Eric's best shot might be just to pass the turn and just stoke Kibler down to 4 and hope to draw another stoke.
So was that a mistake from Eric there? Like, was that should
Well,
he have?
He wins the game if Kibler doesn't have Magma Spray there.
I see. Okay, so it is one of those scenarios where he feels like if
Kibler
the
had
game
one card
goes
in hand.
longer, one card in hand, it has to be that.
The downside though is that Kibler tapped Elvish Mystic, like I said, to leave Mountain up, and Elvish Mystic would be very good to have untapped right now.
Yes.
So that, like, a bluff is one thing, but when your opponent makes something that you think might be a bluff that actually costs them a lot, it's less likely it's a bluff. The more it costs them, the less likely they're bluffing.
Right.
So I would have probably respected the second Magma Spray there, but that doesn't mean it's a mistake. It's just a a calculated risk that Eric took.
Randy.
I just watched an awesome game of Magic. Game 2 with Brad Nelson. He gets Hordling Outburst that his opponent, Austin Bach, is forced to deal with every single one of the tokens. 1 Banishing Light, 1 Jeskai Charm, 1 Lightning Strike. Austin Bach stabilizes at 1 life, goes through a Steam Augury. They play 10 more turns. He answers everything Brad does until the Crackling Doom. Crackling Doom can't be stroked.
Nope.
Can't be dealt with. Those last points of life went away. So Brad Nelson is in the top 8.
All right, once again, Brad Nelson's finding himself there. Now what happened here? The Monastery Swiftspear attacked and traded for the Boon Satyr?
That's what it looks like. It looks like just a straight up trade. Kibler just blocked with the Boon Satyr.
It was a 2-3 versus a 4-2?
Yeah, I guess he didn't want to block with Pelucranos and risk like a lightning. Well, I guess not lightning strike. Maybe risk a stoke the flames.
So Kibler's thinking that Pelucranos is going to be able to take out a couple of tokens at some point during the course of the game here.
I think that's the
and
idea.
That's more valuable for him, or maybe even the Fire Drinker Satyr.
And if Kibler had a 5th land, he'd play it, but he can also unmorph Rattleclaw to get some more mana. He's also got an Elvish Mystic hiding under Yavimaya Coast there.
Oh yeah, he does. Oh, he does find the land here. All right, so this is the turn where he's going to go for Pelucranos. He can make 3, 4. He can make 3, 4, 5, 6 mana.
He can make 7 mana if he unmorphs
so he can
and
actually
taps
do
the
it for
Rattleclaw.
3, yeah. And he could do that in the middle of combat here as well. Wow.
And Kibler needs to start attacking at some point, because if Eric just draws double stoke, then that's the game.
Then that's the game.
Eric actually drew a lightning strike, so and this is what it looks like. So he's 1 point away from killing Kibler here.
So Kibler's plan is to use Pelucranos here, shore up the board state, make Pelucranos an 8/8 or whatever, and then just crunch him.
Yeah, and then try to end the game in like 2 to 3 swings.
Okay.
Another back table update for you, by the way. Isaac Sears and Fabrizio and Terry. And Terry's got the teched out Jeskai with 2 main deck end hostilities. Well, Isaac Sears found out about those with an early Thoughtseize, was able to play his creatures 1 at a time, and then the last creature at the very end, like 10 turns later, was lethal.
Wow.
So Isaac Sears up a game.
The other mode on Thoughtseize. Okay, so Rattleclaw Mystic has been turned up by Kibler. He's going to have 3 mana floating in his pool here.
It's possible that Eric could point 7 points of burn at Pelucranos here. That is an alternate line of play.
Interesting. And especially if Kibler taps his mana creatures here and just leaves himself open.
Well, yeah, Kibler, if he's going to use Pelucranos, he's going to tap out. He's going to Pelucranos for 3. I'm not saying that that's what you should do. I'm
But
just
it is
saying
an
like,
option.
that is something to think about. Well, not if the counters are actually on it now, then that's less likely. But you could also trade your 2 creatures and 1 burn spell for the Pelucranos, though I think I like that less than just double burning it in response. Eric's got 7 points of burn. Kibler's at 8. He's got 2. He's going to have 2 1/1 goblins left. And let's see. It looks like he's pretty close to just, if he draws like a haste creature. If Kibler attacks with Pelucranos, then Eric draws a haste creature. That could be it.
Because I'm assuming that Eric's going to take a huge hit of damage here this turn, right?
That's what it looks like. And it looks like he activated the Fire Drinker Satyr. So he's going to cast Stoke. So his Fire Drinker Satyr currently is 4/2.
2, 3, 4.
All right, looks like he's stoking the Pelucranos.
Okay. Now, how much does he take from Pelucranos on the Fire Drinker, though? The
2
full
points.
8 or only 2?
No, just 2, because it only fights the... Pelucranos deals the X damage, and the Satyr deals the full amount back.
The fight is
So this is
one way.
a pretty even board. I think my inclination would have been the double burn the Pelucranos. You basically trade a Lightning Strike for a Fire Drinker, a 3/2 Fire Drinker, and a 1/1. But Either way, this board's pretty even. If either player draws 2 lands and the other player draws 2 spells, then it could be a pretty quick game.
The problem I see here is that Eric's at 15 and Brian's at 8. And Brian really needs to get him down. Wow, okay.
He doesn't want to trade Rattleclaw
pass.
for a token, so
Right.
he's just choosing to attack there.
What did Eric draw? We know he has a lightning strike in his hand still. He's going to, Kibler's going to take 1 and drop to 7, which could certainly be relevant. It was an arena athlete. And that is a Boon Satyr off the top to join the forest in hand for Kibler. It's still not quite a 2-turn clock either direction here, so...
But Eric really wants to draw his way to target his arena athlete this turn. Given that he doesn't, he's probably just going to lightning strike the Rattleclaw, attack with both. Kibler's going to ambush the 1/1, I think.
Yes.
And then, I mean, normally you wouldn't do that, but I think given that both players are on no cards, you really just need, you actually do need to try to stay ahead in cards here.
Right. Kibler draws his card and passes the turn. And is that
Looks like a Monastery Swift Spear.
So that's not really what the doctor ordered here, right?
No, and actually wouldn't be surprised if Eric just held it.
Yeah, and Kibler feels compelled to block to play around Lightning Strike here, and there's the Swift Spear for next turn.
Keeping the option up to play a 4-mana spell like a
Crater's
Stoke.
Claws? Yeah, he found a Crater's Claws, so Kibler manages to keep things at parity here, and he needs something big now, right? Like, this is where his deck is much better than Eric's.
Yeah.
He can draw 5/5s and 4/4s with haste and all that kind of stuff.
His spells are generally better to draw, and Eric has no use for lands past like 4.
Right.
And even then, he doesn't really want 4 lands.
And I couldn't quite see. I know he's got a mountain in his hand. He's looking at his sideboard. I think he actually has 2 mountains in his hand. And Kibler drew a Crater's Claws, is that right? Kibler is so hard to see with him. All right, he got there, kind of. He finds an Elvish Mystic. At least it's a spell. And something for Eric. It was not a land. And stage 1 here, start attacking with an Elvish Mystic. Another land, though, for Eric Pay. He cannot find a spell.
Yeah, Kibler is,
And there's an Heir of the Wilds.
So Kibler's actually ahead here.
He is slightly ahead. He's at 5, fairly precarious. Oh, that's a Stoke the Flames.
Yeah, well, that's one of the good spells. So actually,
Oh, wow.
Frenzied Goblin could be pretty dangerous here.
What is that in hand for
I think
Kibler?
it might
Is
be a Stubborn Denial. I
Disdainful
think he
Stroke?
actually sided. He might be, yeah, it looks like a Stubborn Denial. He's in a Lightning Strike. So he's,
Okay.
right now he's got Stubborn Denial, but it can't counter the Stoke.
No. All right, there's a Scry land, though, and get
Directly
that
to the
down.
bottom.
Yep. And in they go.
If Eric Pay draws a haste creature, he could just win.
He could just win. If he draws a Monastery Swift Spear here, the game could just be over.
If he draws a burn spell and doesn't play his land before double burning, he could also run into Stubborn Denial.
Is that?
That's the
It is a
Rabble
Goblin
Master.
Rabble Master, and that should do it here.
Well,
right?
it depends on whether he taps out to Stoke or Stokes with 1 mana up.
Oh, you're right. He might just wait.
He could Stoke upkeep.
Okay, he says Stoke,
He
and
tapped
he
the mana.
didn't do it right. So Brian Kibler gets to counter Stoke the Flames and draws card. He's still alive.
Yeah, brutal. And then the Rabble Master gets killed by Lightning Strike.
Wow. Now what does Kibler do? Just
Well,
attack with the 2/2?
I would almost be inclined to attack with the 1/1, but attacking with the 2/2 puts Eric at 6. You're offering the trade. You're hoping Eric doesn't draw a haste creature, though you're not just dead to almost any haste creature.
Wow, Brian Kibler at 4 here is going to trade, and it's a Fire Drinker
So now we're
Satyr.
back down to even. I mean,
Yes.
the board is even. Kibler has the first crack at a draw step.
And Kibler finds Lightning Strike.
To deal 3 to Eric.
To deal 3, he's going to put him to 1 here.
So Eric now needs to draw something. He's got 1 turn to draw an answer
Stoke
to
the
Air or
Flames?
another Stoke the Flames.
Or a way to kill Air. Wow, this is so close. Brian Kibler laughs. How could he not? Such a tight situation. Remember, this is the last round of Swiss, and this is for top 8. Kibler needs to find this game just to force a game 3. Let's see what he draws. He finds something. It's a Frenzied Goblin,
which is gonna
aka
have to chump.
Goblin. And Kibler says go once again, and he doesn't find it. Kibler evens things up. Wow, what a tight game. Woo.
Yeah, that was pretty insane.
We are going to get a game 3 versus Eric Pay versus Brian Kibler here. This was about as tight as they get.
Yeah, and if Eric loses this match, he's going to be kicking himself on that Stoke.
Yes.
I mean, I know how that feels. It's not great.
Randy.
Yeah, I got here just in time for the stubborn denial on with Luis. That
Wow.
was insane. You do not forget about that play. If it turns out to matter. If he wins game 3, it'll be forgotten. Anyway, back table. Isaac Sears versus Fabrizio Antari. Isaac was stumbling on mana a little bit in game 2 and kind of overextended creature-wise, trying to sort of win a game without enough lands, and Hostilities was just brutal this time around. And they're going to game 3.
I need to take a deep breath, Randy. That was insane. So players are sideboarding here. I can tell you that Brian Kibler's fiance and dog are here cheering him on as well, and they were pretty excited on that stubborn denial. Shiro.
The dog didn't. Shiro didn't look like he cared.
His
too much.
eyes got bigger momentarily. We're going to take a quick live looking over at Isaac Sears versus Fabrizio Antari before we get back to our main match.
And Sears started with 2 tap lands, which isn't great, but Fabrizio started with 2 non-red lands with Magma Jet in his hand, so that's not optimal either. So both players are working with slightly less than optimal draws.
Okay. As long as it's even, seems fair.
It might not be even for much longer. Herald of Torment is a solid 3-drop. Those Herald of Torments cost Isaac the last match I watched as they killed him game 1 and basically killed him game 2. He had to Obs Charm his own Herald just to not die. The only upside here for Fabrizio is that he's playing a deck with End Hostilities, so even if he's kind of stumbling on colored mana here, Isaac can't just jam every single creature and assume it's just going to work out. He's got to slow play a little bit at least. The good thing about Rakshasa Death Dealer is that it does in fact play around End Hostilities.
Right.
Sometimes we talk about how Jeskai boards into blue-white control, but you don't literally mean blue-white control. You actually need to play red lands. So.
Yeah. Fabrizio not concerned at the moment. He's going to need to find some at some point, though. Ouch. 5 damage. With no response from Fabrizio, so that is going to add up rather quickly.
And Fabrizio still just no plays. He hasn't spent mana on anything this game, so that's not the place you want to be on turn 5. So even if Fabrizio had End Hostilities, it might not have been right to play it there. Though he actually, because of the second Flooded Strand, actually can cast Dig Through Time end of turn now. So he's at least able to do that. Isaac is going to want to pressure him a little bit, so I imagine he's going to spend a little bit of mana on this Rakshasa.
All right, we're back on our main feature match area here. Brian Kibler versus Eric Pay. We are in game 3. This is for top 8. That last one was about as tight as they get.
And Eric starts with, 1-drop into potentially another 1-drop as well as a Dragon Mantle. So this is kind of what he wants to do. Kibler really wants to have red spells in his hand. He doesn't want to play a Rattleclaw or Elvish Mystic. He wants to play Magma Spray or Lightning Strike.
Yeah, it took every bit of resources that Brian Kibler had there to get himself out of that mess in game 1, and it was about as close as they come. Now he's facing down a 2-1 and a 1-1.
And he's
got a discounted fire breathing now on the.
Yeah, he's got the offending mana confluence in his hand as well, but luckily he doesn't have to play it early this game. And Eric's not going to do anything that.
So Lightning Strike
too
is
hard.
kind of.
It looks like he's just.
Wow.
He's pumping with Dragon Mantle. He has to decide whether he wants to go all out here. You know, if he's got no drops and just Lightning Strikes, I might just be inclined just to pump the Fire Drink Crusader, with the Dragon Mantle 3 times. You just hope Kibler doesn't have a Lightning Strike. Because right now, this is tough. You're doing 4 damage, dropping Kibler to 14, which is okay. You know, given that you have Lightning Strike, maybe you want to try to Lightning Strike Kibler's 3, but his 3 is so often going to be Savage Knuckleblade,
Right.
that's just not going to work out.
It didn't happen last game, but wow, and he did it. He just moved all the way in, and Kibler doesn't have it.
Didn't have the Lightning Strike or the Magma
Wow.
Spray. Yeah, red spells are what he wants to have, and he did not have one in his opening hand.
Brutal for Kibler here. I mean, no Elf, no Rattleclaw Mystic, no Lightning Strike, no Magma Spray. What is in his hand?
Or Heir of the Wilds.
Or Heir of the Wilds. What is in his hand? He's already in 11.
Yeah, and facing down Strike, Strike, Stoke, and 2 creatures on the board. So, especially since one of them's Frenzied Goblin, say Kibler has a Savage Knuckleblade this turn, he's just going to take a giant beating next turn.
Man, Eric Page just very bravely moves right in, and looks like he's going to be rewarded.
It's helped
for
by
it.
the fact that he doesn't have any other plays. Like, he's got Lightning Strike, Stoke, I believe, but that's not a good enough incentive to not just tap out there. Because the reward is so great, and you're not costing yourself very much. Kibler's play this turn might be a morphed Ashcloud Phoenix, which is not where you want to be. It looks like he drew a Rattleclaw Mystic, but the turn 3 Rattleclaw, well, no, it looks like he has a Savage Knuckleblade. At least he's got a reasonable play this turn, but it's not really going to be enough to save him.
Can't even block.
I don't think Savage Knuckleblade on the draw is really what you need to win this matchup.
No, he needed to have removal spell into Savage Knuckleblade on the draw. That's what he wanted. Half of that isn't going to get it done, and there's another. It's a third Lightning Strike off the top for Eric.
Yep.
Wow, this is a savage draw here from Eric Pay.
So you can make the Savage Knuckleblade unable to block, hit for 3, Kibler goes to 8. You just use the Dragon Mantle twice, Kibler goes to 6, and the double Lightning Strike.
Yeah.
I mean, if he draws a land next turn, he could also attack and not use the Frenzied Goblin, and then have, looks like he's got Coordinated Assault, so if Kibler blocks the Fire Drinker, he gets to Coordinated Assault plus Dragon Mantle it, which is kind of interesting.
Wow.
If he has a Stoke, he can also tap Frenzied Goblin and 3 lands and stoke the Knuckleblade and attack for 3. That's also a decent option. Yeah, he's got
not a bad grip.
He's got a lot of options here. Yeah. I like this though. I think this makes the most sense. And then maybe he casts Coordinated Assault here. He could spend 1 to do 2 damage. Let's see, he's doing 3, 4 damage no matter what. Yeah, I think this actually works out the best. You don't use any cards, and you end up in a spot where you can just burn your opponent out if you draw a land. And even if you don't, I think Hammer Hands actually just does it too.
I mean, is it 20? It's not like, I mean, he's got 4 or 5 turns here.
So Eric Pay has to have the kill here. He can make 1 creature unable to block. Hammer Hands make the 2nd creature unable to block. Maybe he doesn't actually have the literal kill, but no, he can Coordinated Assault. You can do 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, yeah, that's 6. So I think it's Hammer Hands, pay for Frenzied Goblin, cast Coordinated Assault, and I think that does the trick. And I think he's just trying to add it up and make sure he gets there here.
I mean, with 5 spells in hand.
Well, he also has 13 points of burn-ins
Right.
as the backup plan, but I don't think he's going to need it.
Since Kibler has no way to gain life in his deck, Eric Pay can take any number of routes to victory here.
Right.
Should pick the most efficient one, but there's Hammer Hand on the Frenzied Goblin. The Ashcloud Phoenix can't block. He's going to attack, trigger the Frenzied Goblin as well. We're probably going to see a Coordinated Assault here while his opponent's tapped out.
Yep.
And that's going to do it. Brian Kibler has to extend the hand. He's going to have to settle for top 16 here.
Yeah, it looks like what's likely a top 16
So
finish.
a good run for Kibler. Eric Pay, though, is going to be in the top 8 with mono red aggro.
Yeah,
That could definitely shake things up.
Yeah, he's looking at another payday here. He's made another GP top 8, and with one of the few, I think the only aggressive deck in the top 8.
I mean, what is it going to be like for him in the top 8 if it's all like Obzon and things like that, though?
I mean, if
must
he
have
built
been beating it all day, right?
If he built a deck to do well against those decks, then he's going to do